Merry Christmas Eve and happy holidays from all of us here at Dead Unlocked. Today I'm really excited. I've been working for about the past week or so to make a build for every hero in Deadlock, kind of to celebrate the holiday season, but also because of the Deadlock Holiday Challenge. I just want to make sure everyone has a build for a hero they can run if they just aren't sure how to play a hero, and there's a hero that maybe haven't played very much and they're trying to get a win for the Holiday Challenge. Wanted to make this as a resource for you, as well as for all the new players that are surely going to be coming to the game once the next big patch releases. Hey everyone, this is Connor here at Dead Unlocked, and I'm really excited to get into this today. I want to, in this video, break down how I made each of these builds, share some really cool resources that I've kind of been developing on the back end, and then go build by build and give you at least a brief explanation of how the build is meant to work. Let's get right into it. All right, I figured we should go ahead and start here. Actually, this is what I was talking about with those resources. So for those that don't know, I actually also write for a website called the Game Haus, and the Game Haus is actually who owns Dead Unlocked. And so I want to make this more of a thing that interacts with the channel and make it more of a resource base. So what I've done here is I've made an article that's kind of the best build for every hero, a complete list, and it goes through hero to hero, and you can click, and we're going to start off with McGinnis. We're going to talk about her first, but and then each article, right now at least, is just the base build that we have so far, a few tips for playing the hero, and then just some other resources from there. But my hope for these is that these can become almost like hubs with alternate builds, maybe like featured community builds, and maybe even some more in the weeds advice about how to play the builds that we have on here. So they're a little bare bones right now. Bear with me as I kind of build these out, but I've been working on these the last week, and I really want these to be good, valuable resources, especially for new players coming to the game. I don't know that there really is a hub right now, so I wanted to make this available, but let's get right into the builds, and in particular, how I made each build. So before we get to going kind of build by build alphabetically through the hero pool, I want to talk about my framework for build creation in general and kind of some things that I try to keep in mind when I'm making builds in Deadlock, because I love build creation. It's one of my favorite parts of this game for sure. So if I were to give you like some pillars of my build creation, I want my builds to be simple, very easy to understand. That way when you load into a game, you know what the build's trying to achieve. It's very easy to understand, and especially for a new player coming in, you're not going to get overwhelmed, hopefully, by these builds. So almost all of them just have the 3 sections: an early game section that is meant to get you to at least one of your 4.8k soul investment spikes. A mid to late game section is roughly what this is, where you're going to get some key items and you're really going to start to finally kind of get into the core of the build. And then a lot, usually at least, a lot of testing or optional items that I'm still working through. They might be good in one game, not so good in the next. I try to just be as exhaustive as possible with this final section to give you some kind of optionality. In general, though, like I said, I want these to be beginner-friendly builds, but also builds you can play if you're a pretty adept player. So I'm an Archon Oracle player, and I use my builds very frequently, and I've not had a problem with them. Like I said, I want them to be simple and easy to understand, easy to use, and also ones that can be really nice if you just want to copy and edit this build and kind of add in some of your own splash. I want them to be very easy to use that with as well. A lot of this, honestly, is because the default build is just not, is not my favorite a lot of times. I think there's some, left on the table with these default builds in Deadlock, like the random trophy collector here, for example. So I kind of want as you can see, I have a lot of these builds. But I want my builds to be as simple as possible. Like I said, good for a beginner player, good for really a player at any level. But without any further ado, let's get right into it, starting with Abrams. All right, here's my no fun zone Abrams build to start us off. Before I really get into a couple more caveats, I'm going to go really quickly through all these builds. I don't want this to be a long video. I don't want to take up your whole Christmas and Christmas Eve with this video. Number 2, there will be links to all the heroes in the description, as well as chapters for each one, so you can just skip around if you'd like. But let's get into no fun zone Abrams. The real idea of this one is just capitalizing on his siphon life, as you can see here. And so we are looking for like ability range through items like Guardian Ward. You could even get Divine Barrier to help more with that. Torment Pulse just to be annoying when you're in that zone. You obviously get your Spirit spike pretty early here as well. You get that investment spike. Same thing with Vitality there. And then you're going to pick up an item like Scourge, or especially like an item like Witchmail. More greens from below, just to be as sticky in the fights as you can be, and getting passive damage and passive lifesteal through your Siphon Life and through Torment Pulse. Kamikaze Bebop is another one that we are rushing green items for, and that is because with Bebop in lane, I think you just need to survive. That's honestly, I think, the best way to play this character. You have so much in your kit to cause problems, and what we're looking to do in this build in the mid to late game is you're going to be attaching bombs to yourself and running in. That's why I even have an item like Majestic Leap in the optional section, but like I said, the biggest thing here is we want to make you as tanky as possible, be able to self-attach bombs, get that move speed, run in, Kamikaze Bebop. So if you love that kind of gameplay style, definitely try out this build. Billy, I think, is one of the heroes that has benefited the most overall from the 4.8k investment souls, and honestly, we try to utilize that as much as possible here. We want him to be as flexible as possible, hit all 3 sections. So in the early game, this is kind of what that looks like. You're going to have an even vitality and spirit investment. By the time you get out of lane, at 10k souls, you're going to have a huge power spike, especially when you get Torment Pulse. This is kind of your sign to roam with this. We finish off weapon very quickly from there to get you to that even flex slot, and then you're kind of free to go from there in whatever direction you might prefer. But like I said, Billy is really strong with flex, at least I think so. So that is the whole idea of this build. Be as flexible as possible, be as adaptable as possible, and just take fights. Calico right now feels like one of the burstier heroes in the game, and it seems like she can just appear in your lane and you can be dead before you know it, especially when you get an item like Arctic Blast going. I feel like I have a lot of Torment Pulse so far in the builds. This is not going to be an item that is in like every build. We've just had a lot of kind of bruiser people in the mix heroes so far, but this is a really spirit heavy Calico. Usually I have like a little bit more flexibility and I'm trying to get to 4.8k spikes a little faster for multiple categories, but with Vitality at the very least, we're getting Enduring Speed and Veil Walker to get you to that spike. And then obviously you have all the spirit investment to get you there as well. But this one is really burst heavy. Just that classic Calico style of once you're out of lane, look to roam around with Ava, gank lanes, burst down enemies really quickly. Just kind of classic Calico gameplay. Doorman has a lot of potential to be a really bursty spirit hero right now, especially when you can keep him healthy and roaming around the map. So that's where we have the Enchanter's Emblem and Fortitude. You could also go extra health earlier in this build. I should have included that, but otherwise, we just have a lot of spirit items to make them as dangerous as possible. A lot of what we're looking at is the Call Bell. The Call Bell is the main kind of thing we actually are looking for here, but there's a lot of room to get good ults as well. We have Knockdown, we have Slowing Hex, Vortex Web, a lot of things to contain people, Call Bell into them, deal a lot of burst damage. So that's how I've been liking to play Doorman. There's a lot of different ways you can play him. An item like Knockdown also really helps you to set up his ult, so there's a lot you can do with this hero right now in the meta. I just saw Pop made a video about him as well, but at the end of the day, Doorman is a spirit burst hero, at least in my mind. Drifter is another one of those heroes that we try to get as much value out of the flex as possible. I think he has a ton of value when you go this direction, maybe investing in some weapon and vitality early, but also including some spirit to help a lot of his abilities scale rather. But Drifter's not a hero that I play a ton, but I have had a lot of success with the Toxic Bullets, Burst Fire kind of power spike that you get out of the early game. I feel really strong usually when I'm playing him coming out of that, and then that is, I think, to me, your power spike as Drifter, is once you can get out of laning phase in that kind of mid-game section, when you're roaming the jungle, causing problems, getting into skirmishes, isolating enemy players, that's when I think Drifter is his best. That's how I think you should use this build. This build is all about 2 words, ability range. Dynamo benefits so much from ability range. Almost his entire kit does. The only thing that really doesn't all that much is Quantum Entanglement, which it gets some help. But Kinetic Pulse, the healing, and the ult all benefit so significantly from ability range that we just go all in for that in this build. So that's where you see Guardian Ward. You even see some Healing Nova here. You see some Trophy Collector getting a little aggressive. Expansion, Knockdown, ability range in that item, by the way. Divine Barrier and Spirit Burn. Everything in your mid to late game is all about ability range, so by the end of the game, you can have massive stomps, massive ults, a huge healing aura, a massive healing nova. It really should help a lot of what you're trying to do as Dynamo when you're playing this build. Great Talon is all about Spirit Burst, kind of always has been. There's some ways to play this hero with a weapon build, but I have always liked the Spirit build much better, where you can focus on your charge shot, and then also making your Guided Owl much stronger, so that's really what we're trying to do here. There's even some ability range built into this to help you be able to land everything a little bit easier, but at the end of the day, this build is all about burst. You're going to be a little bit flimsy at different points in the game. I mean, you're Great Talon, you're a marksman, you're always going to be a little bit of a glass cannon, but there's not a ton of spirit or vitality investment in this one, rather, so be careful, stay in the back line, and dish out a ton of spirit damage with this very simple Spirit Bomber Great Talon build. I've really been liking this Haze build lately. This feels like a really good combination of like a pure ult, kind of burst you down and end the fight before it begins kind of build, but also one that can give you some good value out of just being an M1 carry and using your fixation to deal a lot of damage when you don't have your ult. So that's kind of the whole idea of the build, is to get you as strong as possible without ult until you get to Focus Lens, and then your ult becomes this really strong thing, and then you can kind of go from there. These aren't necessarily strictly left to right. As soon as you can get focus lens, I would say go for it, and that's really when your ult, like I said, is going to become much, much longer. You can kind of see it right there. Bullet Dance is extended. Its duration is extended by Spirit investment, so that's going to make your ult last a super long time. I've loved this build. Definitely give it a try. I have wanted to be a Holliday player for a long time. I just can't seem to get like incredible in this hero, but my favorite way to play Holliday has actually been as kind of like a support character, where you are using your ult as one of your biggest pieces of value that you bring to the team. And so we go super green early just to kind of get some of the baseline of your support set up. And then from there, we just look to be as annoying as possible. And we're going to also be supporting the whole time as well. So we have Rescue Beam for allies, Knockdown to set up ult, things like Curse, Divine Barrier, Cooldown, everything to just get you basically using your ult as much as possible. Obviously give you as many barrels as possible. That is going to be your primary DPS output here. But not much gun investment here. Like I said, we want to be surviving, supporting allies, and dealing big spirit damage when we can on this Holliday build. Honestly, my favorite way to play Infernus really isn't this build. I really love playing Dash Furnace, but the Afterburn is just really deadly, and I love the damage over time, so that really is the whole idea of this build, is let's just get into damage over time, even with things like Duration Extender, Spirit Duration helping with that, Toxic Bullets, right? All of these things to help make your enemies take damage for as long as possible, just to be annoying. So this is a very backline, shoot in, use your dash to escape kind of build. A really fun one, definitely give it a try. Ivy has had a lot of different popular playstyles over her existence, but I really like the Katsu Bomb kind of build. So this is a little bit of a hybrid with that and weapon. Again, we're also trying to go for a little bit of the flex build here. That's where we have our vitality items coming in pretty quickly, but we definitely start the game with weapon and spirit. Once you get Cultist Sacrifice and once you get Alchemical Fire up in particular, that's really going to allow you to start doing a lot of damage with your Katsu bombs. Use this with Stomp, use this kind of to get in, but again, this is a pretty flexible build, but one that is centered around the bomb as your main damage dealer. That's where we also get into items like Vortex Web and Slowing Hex as well. So, fun one for me. I'm not sure if this is like the most meta right now, but I think this is one of those builds, and kind of the point of a lot of these builds is to make them at least somewhat timeless. So that's what I have here. Especially with Dome getting nerfed, and I think this will always be something that Kelvin has to grapple with, is not being able to rely too much on the Dome. I actually like building into his Arctic Beam the most. This is Laser Beam Kelvin. So this is a super spirit heavy build. I mean, literally your entire mid to late game is a spirit investment. You can probably, slot in some green items along the way as well. This is very aggressive, but yeah, the whole point here is to be surprisingly DPS heavy with your beam. It's going to allow you to do a lot. You're going to be healing yourself off of it, slowing down enemies, doing a lot of damage. So this, I think, really helps to not rely so much on your Dome. And then when you do eventually get someone trapped in there, you are absolutely going to be able to burst them down on this build. Lady Geist is another one of those heroes you can play a lot of different ways. She's got a Siphon that's really good, but I really like her Grenade, especially, again, using an item like Vortex Web. But the biggest thing with Geist here is we are going for a bit of a flex. We're going to go spirit heavy early on, but especially once you get the Fortitude and the Radiant Regeneration going on, and then you get into like Cultist and Alchemical Fire, that's when you're really going to feel strong in the mid game. So in the early game with this build, you kind of just have to survive. You're going to be getting a little bit of healing off of Mystic Regen and some of these other kind of healing resources here, but you're not going to be dealing just the most damage until you get into the mid game. That's when your bombs really come online, and so I really love this build. Geist is one you can play a lot of different ways, so this is just kind of my take on a fun way to play Geist. So this is fight and flight Lash as opposed to fight or flight. The whole idea with this, honestly, this is a very small thing, but I consider this kind of a brawly build because we do go for some expansion on the Flog. So that's going to allow you, I think at least, to take some fights earlier on. But then, honestly, in the mid to late game especially, like even getting Tank Buster and Leap here, this really is all about setting up your ult and then getting huge ground strikes whenever you are able to land them. So this seems like a classic, kind of, the classic trope of Lash gameplay. Again, one of these builds I think will be at least somewhat timeless, with some items getting toggled in and out here and there, but this is just my favorite way to play Lash. McGinnis is actually my most played hero by a pretty good amount, and so this build has been tested and tried, and I really do like it. You get a lot of early game flexibility. You get your Bullet Resist Shredder, Extra Charge, and Rapid Recharge to get your turrets going. Before that, I mean, honestly, having Bullet Resist Shredder in opening rounds to start off when we just have Wall and Heal is a really powerful early game spike. And then once you get Heroic Aura online and you have all of your turrets with Rapid Recharge, you really are pretty fully online as McGinnis, and it allows you to go for a lot of different directions here. I really like the healing tempo, especially like I mentioned earlier in the video, when you pair it with like a radiant regen. You're just going to be healing all the time, and your fire rate can go pretty crazy. That's even when you can get into items like Spirit Shredder or Slowing Bullets or Titanic Mag, Spell Slinger even. But the heart of this build is the turret spam and making your turrets as deadly as possible. All of this really serves to achieve that. Throw in a Witch Mail at the end, maybe a Siphon Bullets, and you have a absolute shredder as McGinnis. I love this build. Like I said, this is probably my most played build in the game, so big fan of it. Definitely try it out, let me know. Mina is a real glass cannon in Deadlock, and so why not lean into that and make a glass cannon build? That's exactly what this is. The only parts of this that are kind of anti-glass cannon is just the debuff remover and the stamina mastery. I've seen a lot of top players use these in their builds. I'm not a huge Mina player, but I totally understand the idea that you need to be able to get out as quickly as possible, and you need to be able to remove the debuffs that are stopping you from getting out. Otherwise, this build is all about damage. We just want as much of it as possible. You get a lot of really good value out of both Spirit and Weapon as Mina, so we just look to kind of marry those two in the items we invest in. Toxic Bullets, Tank Buster, cooldowns, all that good stuff. So if you like the glass cannon gameplay and you want to kind of be careful and use your Sanguine Retreat to get out and reset fights, Mina might be the hero for you, and this might be the build for you. Jin's Mark is honestly one of the most interesting abilities in the game to me. You've got this really cool ability to like apply these stacks of spirit damage, but then actively consume them. Makes for a really cool interplay between like a Quicksilver Reload and a Mercurial Magnum. Also with like Spell Slinger, right? We basically in this build, we want to abuse the fact that you can cast a lot of abilities, but you're also doing a lot of weapon damage as kind of your primary tool for dishing out DPS. So we get our green items out of the way early. We start going into weapon early. And then we go all pretty much spirit weapon with maybe a little bit of Witch Mail flare at the end here. This is a super high value build, honestly, I think. I think there's not a weak point in the game for this one. Once you have Mystic Shot and Quicksilver Reload, you're pretty strong for the mid game. You can start TPing around, split pushing. Then once you get some of these items going, you're just going to be a monster in the late game. So Mirage, one of those heroes that just feels very strong all the time. Not really sure what to do about it, but I really like using Jin's Mark, like I said, as my primary way to scale in this build. All right, this is the extra large combo Mo and Krill build. We want to make combo as strong and deadly as possible. That way you can almost kind of play this character like you would like a Calico almost, where you're going to be roaming around, or even like a Haze, where you're roaming around in the mid game, trying to look for kills, trying to be a little bit sneaky, show up, Warpstone, Alkfire, and ult someone, and then they're just gone, hopefully. This can be really good, especially in the mid game when you're roaming with maybe like 1 or 2 people, and you're looking for those mid game skirmishes. And this can also add a ton of value to the late game when you go to get your catch and find someone, especially when you get Diviner's Kevlar in here. It makes you really hardy when you go to ult and really hard to kill. And with everything else you've got going, you're just going to deal a ton of damage. So there's a lot of different ways you can go with this one. But in general, the combo and your ult is the way we scale in this build. I think Paige is Deadlock's best example of a true support hero we have so far. And so I wanted to lean into that really heavily with this build. In general, with Paige, I see a lot of higher level players in particular playing, where you want to get 4 actives with her as fast as possible. Because this build's a little bit more beginner oriented, we don't go for quite as many, but we do. I guess at some point we probably have like 3 or 4. Healing Right, Guardian Ward. Healing Right can go into Nova, and then we also get Rescue Beam, and then Guardian Ward obviously goes into Divine Barrier. Through all this, you obviously get a lot of ability range as well. It's going to make your stun a lot better, and that's going to allow you to set up teammates as well. Positioning is hugely important when you're playing Paige. You need to stay in the back line. If you get dove, it can be very hard to kind of get away from that. So make sure you're positioning correctly, healing allies, stunning people. This is honestly a super fun build to play. To me, Paradox might be the hardest hero to play in Deadlock, and so I've tried in this build to make a more beginner-friendly, easier-to-play build that I still think is pretty good, and that is using the Pulse Grenade as your kind of primary way to deal damage. This is a lot like the Geist build, except for you obviously have more damage from afar with your Carbine and all that. We still have weapon investment through Cultist and Alchemical Fire, so you're still going to be dealing a lot of damage with your gun, but the heart of this build really is the Spirit investment, especially when you get like Echo Shard and Spirit Burn going. Your grenades are going to be absolutely shredding. You're able to get through a ton of really even high-level jungle camps in the mid to late game, but this is one where you want to stay back and throw your grenades into team fights, dealing tons of damage. Especially, like I said, when you get Echo Shard in there, you could even go for like a Vortex Web. You could even greed like a Trophy Collector, but in general, the heart of this is just getting your grenades to be as annoying as possible. Of all the heroes in Deadlock, there's honestly a case to be made that Pocket has the least room for creative expression and builds. I feel like you just need to get certain items. I'm also a big fan of the way Ido plays Pocket, and so a lot of this is just modeled around Ido's build, honestly. But I'm trying to make it a little bit more simple and prioritize some things about the kit that I think are really good. So in particular, like, we want to reduce cooldowns as fast as possible, especially once we have Cold Front and Majestic Leap up. But the biggest thing here is you're getting in, you're doing spirit damage, you're ulting, and you're getting out. That's the gameplay loop of Pocket that makes him so deadly and so timeless in Deadlock. So that's what we're really trying to capture in this build. Like I said, I think I took up a lot of inspiration from Ido's build here because he plays this hero honestly better than I think just about anyone else does. So I think he has a keen sense of how to build the hero modeled in here as well. We've done this with a few other heroes in the build series as well, but wanted to specifically give Ido a shout out here for Pocket. As an Oklahoma City resident, I feel like I had to throw the severe thunderstorm warning name somewhere in one of these builds, and I honestly think that this is for sure my favorite way to play 7. And this is where you're basically you're pretty passive through the early and mid game. You're not going to be doing a whole lot. But when you get into the late game and you start getting some of these items like Lightning Stroll, Boundless, Unstoppable, your ult is incredible. And it's such a fun, it's probably really annoying to play against it. I feel like I'm always annoyed when I'm going up against a 7 that's an ult build, but there's nothing like it for when you're trying to take the enemy's base or trying to defend your own base or fighting in mid. It's just one of those things that's so valuable in Deadlock. So I wanted to make a build obviously centered around here. Shout out Oklahoma for the severe thunderstorm warning. We get these all the time. But yeah, my favorite 7 build by a landslide is an ult build, so I wanted to make one here. I honestly never thought I would be a Shiv player, but now that his spirit is really effective, I've been loving playing Shiv lately. He's got a really fun gameplay style that I'm trying to capture in this build. This is a very simplified build. You're going to probably want to add some other items to this as you go, and I'll work on this one as well more. But where you go with this build is you get a lot of damage from his knives, from his serrated blades, and then you're going to look to slice and dice to kind of get out. So I like to poke from afar with knives, wait to get collapsed on, dash through a whole bunch of people, and then you're still pretty hardy. That's where we have items like Decay to help with your poke. But a lot of this, kind of like the Infernus build, is damage over time based. We just want to be as sticky in fights as possible, heal Bane to deny healing, and then just cycling your abilities as fast as you can. I really love this gameplay style for Shiv. Like I said, I need to add more to this build probably, but I've played this one in a few games and I've had a lot of success with it. Thanks to the insane DPS potential of the Spectral Assistant and Vexing Bolt, we really just lean into that with a real spirit bursty build here. Lightning Bolt is the name, and yeah, we're going for heavy spirit damage here, a lot of ability range to make those shots a little bit easier to hit, and even some healing for the backline. So this is one where you kind of sit back with your team, you poke out. That's kind of how I feel like Sinclair is best anyway. Then you just use your Rabbit Hex for if you get dove, basically, and then also ult. The ability range also makes both of those things way better. It makes it way easier to steal ults, which I think is probably the hardest part of Sinclair's kit, especially for newer players, is being able to steal an ult and then be able to somehow use it. So all of the things like Healing Nova, like Guardian Ward, like Divine Barrier really help you, and Greater Expansion obviously help you to do all those things more effectively. But yeah, the whole idea with this build is you're hitting him with the lightning bolts, so good luck. I feel like if Faker were a Deadlock hero, he would be a late game victor that's like 20k souls above everyone else. So I had to go with the Unkillable Demon King for the name of this build. Shout out Faker. This one is all about just doing what I think makes Victor the best, and that is dealing a ton of spirit damage, healing a lot, and being just as much of a menace in late game fights as you can. This is one where I would say in general with Victor, you're going to, when you have your ult, try to travel in a pack. You can fight 1v1s, but if you get caught out by multiple members after you've died the first time, there's no greater feed than dying twice in a row with 5 people around you as Victor. But if you have a couple people with you, you can get backed up. That's how I feel like Victor is best played. So this one combines a lot of just things that I think make him good in general. He's another hero that I think really benefits quite a bit from the flex system and the 4.8k soul investments. So we achieve that through Cultist and Fleetfoot for weapon. We get plenty of greens, and then we go Torment Pulse and a couple things early to help make him deal as much damage as possible, heal as much as possible, and just be as annoying as possible throughout the game. Shout out Faker once again, Unkillable Demon King. This Vindicta build used to be a lot more popular than it is now, but I think this one could come around at some point, and that is a Trapper Vindicta build where we're the main thing we're using here is her stake, and then we're chaining that with Alchemical Fire, all kinds of other things to make her stake annoying, Vortex Web. The real way to play this is to stake someone, get everyone grouped together, then throw your crows, that way they bounce around to as many people as possible. Like I said, this one was nerfed a bit a while back. I don't know how long many people watching this video have been playing Deadlock, but this one was really popular. I think it was a couple months ago. And now people are playing a lot more gun or sniper heavy Vindicta. I think this one, though, will come around. It's a great way to add some crowd control to your team, which is always valuable in Deadlock, so I've always liked this gameplay style as Vindicta, and I have terrible aim, as you can see with a lot of these builds being spirit-focused, exposed, but I'm terrible at hitting the sniper shots with Vindicta, so I go more for this build, and I've had a lot of good success with it. Viscous is one of my other most played heroes in Deadlock, and I really think you can do so much with Viscous. I've toyed around with a goo ball build, a pure splatter build, but I really feel like the best way to play Viscous is with a little bit of support, so you get a ton of value out of what your cube can do for allies, and obviously the healing from that. And you also get a lot of self-healing from Radiant Regeneration. This feels like one of the best items in the game for Viscous. The healing numbers you'll get from this and improved healing and all the other items in this build are really staggering. And you can do a lot of spirit damage really sneakily, but the goal of this build is not to be the highest DPS in the lobby, it's to be one of the most annoying to kill, and you're going to provide the most value to team fights. Honestly, this build feels really strong throughout the game, maybe the only weak point being in the mid game when you're like trying to get these items bought. But overall, this build is a ton of fun to play, especially if you like a support gameplay style a little bit. Vyper is a really tricky hero to play in Deadlock. I have not played a whole lot of Vyper, but I think right now is actually a surprisingly good time to play Vyper in a flex kind of way. So that's what we're trying to go for in this build. The early game is a really chunky section here. There's a lot to get through, but once you get through all of these items and you get Mercurial Magnum, I think you are really, really strong. And this is a build that I think can split push really effectively. It can also add a lot of value to team fights. Vyper used to be a real M1 carry, but now I feel like Viper's getting a lot more value out of the abilities, in particular Lethal Venom and Screwjab Dagger. So look to use those as much as possible. Don't be afraid to cycle abilities. Don't be afraid to take fights. You have a lot of lifesteal, and we get Leech pretty early, so you can sustain and kind of cycle through fights pretty effectively as Vyper these days. I think Warden is my second or third most played hero. I really love Warden, and talk about a beneficiary of the flex system. Warden is one of the best flex heroes in the game. He's really good when he has proper vitality, and there's items that fit into his kit really nicely, and then his spirit and weapon both being strong is a really powerful interplay. What we actually do here is we go a little bit into Trapper early, so we extend the duration of Trapper and we make it bigger, and then we get slowing bullets, so we want to set up traps early. Most people expect you to use Flask in the early game. I feel like Flask is only okay when you get traps set up, though, and you can just headshot and beam someone down. I feel like it is way more effective, so that's where we go in the early game. Once you get into the mid to late game, we go Majestic Leap, and then we just start to scale the ult as fast as we can. There's some other items in there, like Spirit Rend, Enduring Speed, to help you do some other things, Kevlar, but honestly, the biggest goal of the mid to late game is to make your ult as devastating as possible. You'll already have the vitality and the weapon support from the early game, and Majestic Leap to be able to survive and also deal gun damage during that, but yeah, like I said, Warden feels really good in the flex system, so definitely give this build a try. Wraith is a super interesting hero to play in Deadlock right now because you almost have to invest in some spirit into her early, but she's obviously much more of a weapon hero, so we get a lot of that spirit investment out of the way in the early game. In particular, once you get Surge of Power on your cards, you are going to feel very, very strong. You need to be hitting those cards ideally, but yeah, after that, it's a lot of weapon damage through Tesla bullets, all these items here. You get into toxic bullets. Spell Slinger feels really good on Wraith because of the ability cycling. Spiritual Overflow, Siphon, Mercurial, all the kind of classic things you'd expect with the Wraith build. I think the base of this build was from one of Metro's builds. I think he's obviously someone with a lot of skill on this hero, a lot of experience on it, so I trust a lot of where his builds were going. I don't play a lot of Wraith, so this was kind of a simplified, modeled version of Metro's build. Of any hero in Deadlock, I don't think anyone wants to cycle their abilities more than Yamato does, and nor can cycle their abilities as good as Yamato does. So it seems clear to me that Radiant Regeneration is just a must-buy item on this hero. That's kind of the whole crux of this build, is you're going to be Radiant Regenning, getting a lot of vitality and spirit early, and then just trying to exist in fights as much as you can. Witchmail is also a really great item for Yamato to be able to kind of make your abilities cycle even more. So in general with Yamato, at least the way I feel like you play her is you go for the 1, you grapple in, you literally go in order. You go 1 ability, 2 ability, 3 ability, 4 ability, and then you go right back through it. So that feels like a great way to play Yamato right now. This build feels really, really fun to play. You feel very hardy, but you can also deal a lot of damage with your abilities. So there you have it, one basic build for every Deadlock hero. I really hope that this can help some of you all to achieve the Holiday Challenge. Maybe you saw a build for a hero you don't play very often. I want it to be an accessible way for people to get into trying new heroes. That's really so much of what I feel like the alpha is about in Deadlock, is trying new heroes, getting a chance to play the game kind of at its full breadth, and not just one-tricking a hero. That's just at least my take. So, but again, a lot of this is oriented around the new player experience. So for me, you know, when I booted up this game for the first time back in the day, this was one of the most overwhelming things for me, was just looking through all the different builds, trying to make sense of it. I always knew that I was going to get into build crafting, or at least try to, and I wanted to create a really repeatable, easy to understand system. That is so much of the goal here. And the other part of this is I intend to update these builds as often as possible to make them meta and to, you know, kind of use items that are maybe a little bit more overtuned than others. But a lot of the goal of this is to make kind of timeless builds that I think fit into the archetypes of the heroes very simply. So obviously with McGinnis here, there's always going to be ways to build her turrets, because that's just a part of her kit that's good. Kind of similar to how we talked about when we talked about Dynamo. Ability range is always going to be good on Dynamo unless they just change ability range. So that's kind of how I view it, as fitting into these kind of timeless archetypes of the hero, even if it's not the most meta this week, for example. And the last thing I'll say here, just to be candid, a lot of these heroes I haven't played a ton of. Like there's a few heroes that I have probably less than 10 games on, and it felt weird making builds for heroes like that, because I haven't tested them properly, and I don't know for a fact that some of these builds are good. A lot of these I looked at top builds and kind of scoured some commonly bought items. I looked at Deadlock Night Shift and kind of watched what some of the pros were buying in some of those heroes. But all that to say, I would love feedback in the comments, items that you might swap around, different ways of approaching some of these builds. Definitely let me know y'all's feedback. There's a good chance that feedback in the comments I will take seriously and make alterations to the builds. So please do let me know what you think of any of these builds. But yeah, final thing, I hope everyone's having a very Merry Christmas, a good holiday season. It's not my favorite time of the year personally, but like I said, I love being able to make some Deadlock content for this time of the year, and to be able to celebrate in kind of my own way. Obviously, it's very festive in Deadlock. You gotta love the aesthetic here in game. But as always, thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll have some leaks coming later in the week. I've been very behind on that, trying to get all of these articles ready and these builds ready. I really do want to make those articles more of a resource down the line. They're very bare bones right now, but I do intend to kind of bulk those up. So if you have any suggestions for those as well, please do let me know. But that's going to do it. Thank you all so much again for tuning in. And from our house to yours, have a very Merry Christmas. We'll see you all next time here at Dead Unlocked.